Right, I'll start now. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar covering understanding the new changes to the AP1 submissions. Now, Geodesys have been working in partnership with SDLT to actually deliver this service. We've been working them for a few years now. And the expected time for this session is around about 45 minutes. So if you have any questions, can you please type them in the chat box? And I'm Kay, a key account manager here at Geodesys, and I'm presenting with Paul Clyde from Form.
Hello.
Hi, Paul. So just before we kick off, it's just a refresher on how all this started. So let's look at the Law Society CQS update of the 3rd edition of the CQS toolkit. Now, the 4th edition will be out next month. And when the CPMS was updated back in May 2019, one of the new additions to CPMS 1.2 was practices must have a procedure in place in relation to SDLT, and that must include an audit trail, plus a procedure in place for verifying the amount of SDLT where applicable. Now, Paul will be able to demonstrate how we do this seamlessly without you even having to think about it. Now, during the pandemic, CQS assessments were put on hold by the Law Society because they wanted to support members. However, since May this year, they've decided they are going to ramp them up again. And SDLT is one of the selected procedures which features on the actual CQS assessment form. And if we just have a look at the form, we can see on here, it's question 39, but to be honest, they could have moved them about. But if we have a look at the form, you can see that it's got, is there an SDLT audit trail on file? And the assessor will simply tick yes or no. And if it's no, then they'll write in the non-compliance details and give you corrective actions. Now, the corrective actions, depending on the compliance details, could be anything within a time frame of 30 to 90 days. So that's the background. So now I'm going to hand you over to Paul to speak, who will talk about the new changes. Paul.
Thanks so much, then, Kay. Could we have the first slide, please?
Yep, can you see it?
Yes, can now. So what I'm going to do for the next 30 minutes or so is to talk about the changes themselves, but also then how you can address those changes in an efficient manner. We'll look at what Kay was talking about in terms of the CQS compliance and how we can automate that into the process. But one of the other things I want to demonstrate today is when it comes to the submission of legal forms, very much there is a direction of travel towards more and more digital forms. And so the challenge could be for the practice that they have to learn multiple different portals and how they all work, when really what you would ideally like is something that allows you to have a common process for all and allows you to maximize the use of data. So we're always aiming to minimize the number of times you need to add data in. At the end, we can talk a little bit about some other land registry developments that are due. Next slide, please, Kay. So how can we create efficiencies? There are a number of ways that we can do this. The first is really by giving you that ability to take data and reuse it time and time again. So some of the initiatives that we're working on is to be able to take search data and use the search data to populate through to SDLTs, but then not only take the data from search through to SDLT, but then take that through to the EAP1, and indeed for commercial transactions, Companies House, and then MRO1. And what we're really looking to do is to assist you in terms of compliance and minimize the opportunity for requisitions. Next slide, please, Kate. So what I'll do now is I'm going to take over the screen. So let me share my screen with you all. And what we're going to do today, I'm going to show you the SDLT submission process within SDLT to start. But this is all available within Geodesys, and at the end, what I will do is show you where this is so that you can take advantage of it. And you'll see the benefits throughout. So here we are. I'm going to start today in SDLT, and then I will move on to EAP1s, and I will then move on to MRO1. So I'm going to take this in 3 stages. The key thing to remember, though, at the start is that as of the end of the month, you will no longer be able to use the EDRS system. You do need to submit digitally for your EAP1. So what we're giving you here is a digital process that you can take forward. But to maximize efficiency, I'm taking it back a step, and I'm going to start with the SDLT application. So here we have our home screen of the core forms that have been submitted recently, and I can see the status of the various forms. Now, one unique thing that Geodesys are now offering you is the ability not only to submit SDLTs, but also for Welsh property transaction, the system automatically switches over to an LTT, and it's very easy to work between the two. So let me start by taking a form from scratch. And what I need to do is add in a matter reference here. The next step is how we determine SDLT or LTT. So it's asking me about the 1st of April in 2018. I'm going to say yes. And now what I would do is I've got my local authorities. If I pick Anglesey, I will have an LTT. If I pick Ashfield, I'll have an SDLT. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to stick with an SDLT. Then I've got the options around the type of SDLT I want to use. So we'll now add our forms. Now, this is a workflow. So as I'm answering questions, basically information is going to flow throughout the various tabs that I've got available. So I'm going to move into transactions, and you can see already it is starting to fill in the information for me. If I go to tax, here is the CQS scheme. So what you've basically got is something as an option, so you do not need to use this. So if you don't want to, it's there as an option that can be switched on or off. But effectively, what this allows you to do is to demonstrate that 2 sets of eyes have looked at the tax calculations within the application. So here it is. Here it's switched on. And for 99% of firms, what they would do is click on fee earner. They would then drop down the names of the various people they want to check, and they will select an individual, add that in here, upload any relevant supporting documents, and then they would click send. And your colleague will receive a link. They click on the link and they can see this particular transaction, and they can assess the documents that you have associated with it. And if they are happy, they tick that they have agreed. Once that is done, this is being captured within the required audit trail, and that sits here. So you can see it's already starting to be built over here. Now, rather than fill in a form from scratch, which I thought would be a little bit boring, a little bit time consuming given the restraints, what I'm going to do is just show you one of the other bits of the functionality. So I've gone to my previously submitted forms, and if you need something that is very similar, you can take it and you can copy it. So here we have a form that's been completed, and you can start to work your way through filling in the information as you work your way through it. One thing to point out under vendor, which is going to be available soon. So it's not there just now, but as I said at the start, the name of the game is to minimize the opportunity for errors here. So one of the things that is going to be added fairly soon is going to be a proprietor name checker. And this is actually going to give you direct access into the land registry database to be able to check the seller's details. Otherwise, you could have an SDLT that is accepted and it is only spotted once you move on to the AP1. So we're going to bring something forward into this particular form so that you can check on the seller's details now rather than when it's too late. Also, you'll note as we work our way through the form, over here, you're starting to see the information gathering for the EAP1. So while you've got the file open, you can start to add the information. And this continues throughout the form. You're filling in information for your SDLT submission, but you are also filling information here around the EAP1. So effectively, we get to the point where we've added our information and I'm ready to submit. Now, as I've said, we've got the CQS switched on. So in order for me to proceed, I'm going to say that these figures have been agreed. So we're now good to go. Now this is going to send some data to, it's dummy data and it goes to a test server. So I shall click submit to HMRC and this should take around about 12 seconds to go through as dummy data. So I'll just let that run. This is when you get nervous and hope it's going to work for you. There you go, 12 seconds, all good to go. So it's successfully submitted and we now have available to us our STLD5. We also have the completed form available and we have a cashier's chitty. The cashier's chitty is really like an aid memoir that you can send on to your finance team. So I just enter in the email address there and I can send that information through. So lots of people like the idea. But here's when we start to drive further efficiencies, because the information we've used in the submission of the SDLT combined with the information we've added around the EAP1 gives us the ability to get up to around about 94% auto population of the EAP1. And also what I'm trying to do here is to minimize the training requirement that you need in using forms across different portals. So we're now going to switch from SDLT. It's asking me just to check the party details. So we've now moved from SDLT and we are now into an EAP1. And if you look at the document, you can already see that we have substantial auto population of this particular form. So this is where we're really starting to speed the process up and we are minimizing the opportunity for errors. Now, one of the things that we understand is going to happen is at the moment, if you submit using the EDRS system and there are some obvious errors that the people at the land registry can see, they will make those changes. That will no longer continue. It will be much of a kind of blunt, is it right, is it not right? And if it's not right, it will then go to requisitions. So anything we can do to minimize the opportunity for errors, that's what we're looking to do. That's why you have the seller checker. Other examples of that are, let's just scroll through a page or two. Things like this. People have got transferee. Now that has been auto-populated. You don't need to touch it. But one of the common errors is people mix up transferee and transferor, and that would mean you would get a requisition. So it's that sort of thing that we can start to speed up. And in effect, all I really need to do is I've got various documents I need to attach. So I need to add a document here. It takes me to the relevant page where I need the information and I can add that. So it's very easy to do. And I'll now close that particular bit down, save the information. You can see it's added. Your SDLT has already been added here. So you can see that's why it says remove, because it's been added. So I've got a couple of documents that I need to add. Now, I'm trying to do things as fast as possible today, so I'm skipping a couple of little steps. But what I wanted to do now is to show you what happens when I attempt to submit. Clearly, I've not got all the information available. The application has what we call pre-validation checking software. And what that means is it's going to check if there are any basic mistakes in the form. So let's give it a go to submit. Now, one thing to point out, there is no test server for the land registry, so we can't actually submit this form anyway, but it is not going to move out of the application because it will fail its submission. But I want to show you what happens. So let's try and submit. And it has failed. You can see that in black and white here. Now, the next step is, well, okay, it's failed, but this form is 13 pages long. Where has it failed? And that's the beauty of the system, because it tells you where you've got issues. So I just click onto them and it takes me straight to it. I missed the date off, so I can add the date and I'm then good to go in terms of revalidating, and I can e-submit. Now, as I was saying before, I'm not in the position that I can actually submit anyway, but I want to show you a couple of other bits of functionality that are available to you there. So I don't want to do that at all. Just get rid of this. The first is that we have built a navigation tool for you here. So you've got the option to use back and next buttons. If you need to add extra data, you've got the ability to insert copy pages into this particular form. And in terms of navigating through it, you've also got all of the headings here, and I can click onto these and it will take me to that section. So it's just making life easier for you. One of the things we do try and do is you try and keep forms looking like forms to minimize the training requirements. You'll find that throughout the forms that we're using here. The other thing you've got from a compliance angle is at the bottom, you have an audit trail. This is telling me all of the touch points associated with this form. Now, one of the other things that I've switched on here is I want to have an automatic way of the system sending me copies of the form whenever it changes. And that's why you're seeing sent to there. But other things that you could do is you could have someone working on this form and they want to share it with a colleague so that they can review. So I would go to share with a colleague, click here, click on my down arrow, select my colleague, ask them to review the form and anything else I want to say, click send, and your colleague would receive an email with a direct link so that they can come in here and they can review the form. If you so wish, the practice can be set up so that you have what we call peer review in place. And what that means is that I, as an individual, cannot actually submit without permission from someone else. And we can set these processes in place for you so that the form has to be reviewed by somebody else. It's a mandated process prior to submission. And we've got various variations on that are available to you. I can also, as I did within the SDLT application, if I've more or less got a requirement for another copy of this form, I have a form copy button over here. If there is certain data you are always adding into forms, you can actually take any of the forms available, add the information into the form, and then save it as a template so that that could be used as your go forward version rather than the standard version of the form. But once we've got all of our information together, we submit via the e-submit button. As I say, unfortunately, I cannot do that. But this is going to submit the data, not the forms, to the land registry. That's what's going to happen here. It's a direct integration. And in terms of responses to that, this will all come back into the application. Now, to kind of show you what happens when you've got requisitions, what we've done is we've taken a screenshot to kind of illustrate the point. So, for instance, when I do have any requisitions, I can clearly know about them because I'm automatically emailed that I've got requisitions here. In terms of the various status of the form, we have draft, pending, accepted, and pending requisition. And if there are any requisitions, they will come back to this particular form. So you'll know you've got them and you'll come to the form. And once you get here, you can see we have a reply to requisitions button. Not only that, but it is telling me what the actual issue is. So I've got everything at my fingertips. Within the application, you will also see a summary of all of your digital submissions so that you can take a view as to when you want to do different things, and it's much harder to forget them. Equally, if you've timed out, it does not mean you need to start again. You simply go back to the form and you need to address the issues that you've received, and then you can resubmit your data. So reply to requisition, this is what comes up. You'll add your information here. Any relevant documents will go here, and you've got phone notes. So everything will come back into the Formevo application. And once you've replied to your requisitions, you have the status of submitted and pending, and the fact that your requisitions have been replied to. Now, a couple of other things that you may want to do, going back into the application itself, you've also got the ability, if you want to set some reminders around a particular form, I can move over here, click on form deadlines, add some notes here. So whatever you want to say as a reminder to yourself, then select the date here of your reminder. You can remind other people if this is a shared process. But if it's just for you, click send an alert to myself, click update, and at -3 days from this date, the application will automatically remind you about the form issues that you've raised here. So you've got 3 days of reminders coming your way. Now, I've talked about us looking at a common process. So I'm going to now take a step back into SDLT over here, and I'm going to go to my form list. And what I wanted to show you now is an example, he says, hopefully, where I've got one, of an MR01 submission. So let me just see if I can find one on here. There is one. So we've talked about SDLT, we've talked about LTT. Both of those will auto-populate your EAP1. If this is a commercial transaction, then you can also bring into the process your MR01 register of charge submission. So I'll quickly click on the link. And again, it looks like a form, so that we're minimizing the amount of training that's required. Incidentally, if you are stuck on anything within your EAP1 or your MR01, everything has question marks against it. So if you want to remember, how do I share with a colleague, I can click on this and it gives me a guide with plenty of visible pictures there for you in terms of what's going on. So we've moved across to the MR01. Now, I'm not going to pretend that we are filling in a lot of data within the MR01, but you can see some information has been pulled across. We have an accurate number, and we've also got the name of the firm. Now, we're into the MR01, and I've got the ability here to engage with Companies House prior to submission. And this is all about, again, minimizing errors. So I've got the company number here. I can do a charges checker. This is data coming from Companies House, so that I can check this. Another thing that we've got is we're going to deal with the tricky issue of the word limited. If the firm is registered using the abbreviated LTD, and I put Osprey Accommodation full word limited, this would be rejected, and vice versa. So you need to know. So how do you know? Well, a quick check is, because we've got full integration with Companies House, I can click here and I can see this is LTD. So I'm not going to make that error either. So you can see throughout the whole of the process of SGLT, AP1s, etc., we're looking for ways. On this particular form, if I take you to page 4, as per the AP1, you need to upload some documents. And here I need to upload a document, but I am going to fail to concentrate. I'm thinking of something else and I don't do it. Now, just so you can see how this works, I'm going to come completely away from that section. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to attempt an e-submission. And again, what has happened is that the application, not the government portal, has spotted these errors. So there's nothing gone on file in terms of information at Companies House. It is simply telling me I need here to basically add information. So I would add that and then I can resubmit. And again, there is no test server, so I can't actually show you that, which is quite awkward when you're on a demonstration. But I think what you can see is we've got this smooth process across multiple forms here. Now, what I wanted to do just to finish is if I go back to Geodesys, and what I've done here is I've opened up a test case that I've added in, or a test matter rather, and I've started to fill in a form. So the way to access the SGLT within Geodesys is you would come here, and the first time you will add the form. And if you want to review what you've done, I can click here. Sorry, I was logged out, so I need to log in.
That's a timing issue. If
that's a timing issue, yeah. So here we go. And post completion, view. And here we are into our form, and it looks pretty much what you've seen before. All of the functionality is there because it's based on SDLT, and you can now start the process and work your way through it. So that was really everything I was going to cover off today, to give you that view across multiple government portals, but a fairly common experience across those. So I will stop my share. And one thing I just wanted to, can we go back to the slides again? So possible next steps. So Formevo as a business is involved with some of the land registry committees on digital development and the transformation process. And the steps that we think are going to be coming in next year are going to be very much moving to the self-ID email approach, sorry, e-signature coming into the system. So effectively from that, the next step on, we think will be changes to things like the TR1 and the requirement to have witnesses involved, because if you are self-IDing as part of accessing these documents, you will no longer need witnesses. So there is going to be some further developments and continual developments within the land registry over the next year. And one of the benefits of using the Geodesys application and working with ourselves is because we're on the committees, we're able to influence them in a positive manner from a software use perspective, but also we know about these things earlier so that we can look to implement within Geodesys any of these changes. So as things happen, we will look to automatically include these within the application. So those are really, I think, the main things I was going to cover. Sorry, there is one other point I'd like to make, which is for those people that are used to EDRS, there are two bits of functionality there that you may use. One of them is basically around the ability to expedite, and the other is around an expected completion date. As it stands at the moment, we do not believe they will be available come the end of the month. The Land Registry is very much aware that they haven't created that capability yet, and they are certainly working on it. But as it stands today, I'm not aware that they will be ready, but there's certainly something that they will be looking to do as soon as possible within the new processes. And once they're available, we will then include them into the Geodesys application. So I just wanted to mention that. So I think that was everything from my notes. So I'll hand over to you, Kay.
Thanks, Paul. Just to recap, the SDLT service, or SDLT service gives you seamless integration with HMRC for your SDLT return and the land registry for your EAP1 application process. It will automatically help you comply with Law Society rules, giving you a permanent full audit trail, as Paul demonstrated, and it will help with remittances as any errors are reported before submission. So that's really important. And from our point of view, I mean, we invite you to try our SDLT and AP1 service because it's free of charge. You will also notice as you're on our site, our search pack pricing is very, very, very comparable with competitors, and where applicable will include the Law Society copyright and owned Con 29 DW as we produce this in-house. You will also notice our pricing is completely transparent, and once you've chosen your search pack, all package discounts will be displayed so you can in turn pass them on to your customer. So we do not charge for anything, including case fees or mapping fees. So please do try us. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. If anybody wants to contact me with questions direct, this is my contact details. What I will be doing is sending every participant a copy of the video and a copy of the slides. So please feel free to email me with any questions. I'd like to thank you for your time, and Paul, thank you for your time too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.